don't need you. Hey, I can't figure it out. Something about her.
Firstly, the most important, you're going to be needing a yarn. For my own yarn of choice, I am using this beautiful color. It is a medium weight yarn. I think at this point you guys already know I use the same size yarn, the same brand all the time. This is actually from Vibra. I will link it down below, but I don't think you can order if you live outside of the Netherlands or outside of Europe. Actually, I think Belgium, Netherlands, Germany. I'm not sure, but I'll see if I can link the link to the website down below. One of these is actually 100 gram, but because I am starting, I don't know exactly how much I will be using for my size. So when I find out at the end of the video, I will link that in the description box below as well. After this, you're going to be needing a 4mm for the crochet hook size, and this is what I am going to use. I think I'm going to use till the end of the video. I am thinking about using a smaller crochet size for the neck pattern, so maybe like a 2.5, but for the lower part I will be using a 4, so let's just say a 4mm and a 2.5mm. You are of course going to need some measurement tape and some scissors because we will be needing this to cut off some yarn and switching from one yarn to the other yarn. So now let's go into the measurement. But for the measurement, we are going to go back and forth just so you guys don't get lost and just so it's not a lot of information. The first measurement we will be needing is going to be the length, basically the length for the lower part of the panel. So with your measurement tape, you are going to take your desired length measurement, and that is going to start right from this area. Mine is going to start right from this area up until however long I want this to be. So I originally wanted to make a dress, but I just thought a sweater will be faster because yeah, I think the next two projects are probably going to be a sweater, a crochet dress, so I might as well just switch to a sweater. So with your measurement tape, you're just going to grab that, and right from wherever you want the V neckline to start, that is where you're going to insert to put the measurement tape, and you're going to just take this measurement up until your desired length. I think mine ended up being 20 inches, but of course you can make this as long as you want or as short as you want it to be. So we're going to get started with the measurement, the full length measurement. You're going to make a slip knot, grab your crochet hook, and you're going to make a chain that is as long as that measurement. For the reference of this example, I'm just using 20 chains, but your chain should be just as long as your desired length measurement. And after your chain, you're going to chain an extra one, which is going to be a turning chain. For the first row, you're going to yarn over, skip the first chain, and into the second chain, you're going to go with your first half double crochet stitch. From there on, you're going to yarn over and go into the next chain with one half double crochet. Yarn over, go into the next chain with one half double crochet, and repeat this until you get to the very end of your row. And you should have something like this at the end of the row. You want to make sure you're inserting one half double crochet into every chain, because if you skip a chain you are going to reduce the length, and I'm sure you want to keep your desired length. From here on, we are going to start row 2, which is going to be our increase row, and to do that all you're going to do is you're going to chain one and turn, and right into the very first half double crochet from the previous row we are going to insert our first half double crochet. But because we are increasing and because this is going to be a ribbed pattern, we are going into the back loop of the stitches instead of both loops. So on each stitch you would see that you have two loops. So right here you have your front loop, your back loop, sorry, and this is your front loop. So your back loop is basically the loop right after the loop that is facing you. So if your work is done this way, this is automatically going to be the back loop because this is right after this loop that is facing you, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to just insert your first half double crochet into that back loop, into the very first stitch, and because we are increasing, you're going to yarn over and insert an additional half double crochet. So in that very first stitch you should have a total of 2 half double crochets. From there on, you're going to just go ahead and insert 1 half double crochet into every stitch until you get to the very end of the row. And also for row 2, you want to make sure you're still inserting one after double crochet into every stitch, making sure you're not skipping any stitch. So just so you know, we are increasing on just one side of the panel, so this other panel side of the panel is going to remain a very straight panel, while this side is going to be increased, but we're not increasing on every row. So we already increased for row 2, which means for row 3 you're going to just chain 1 and turn, and just the same way we worked to row 2, you're going to yarn over and go into the back loop of your first stitch with your first half double crochet. And again, like I said, we're not increasing for row 3, which means you're just going to repeat one half double crochet into every stitch until you get to the very top of the stitch of the row. So coming to the very top of the row, you want to make sure you go into that increase, the very first stitch, with your last half double crochet. But what I'd like to do is, instead of going into just the back loop, I like to go into both loops when I'm coming to the very end of each row, because I feel like it just makes your work more solid instead of going into one loop. So I only just go into the back loop of the rest of the stitches, but the last stitch on each side I like to go into both loops, but this is optional, you don't have to do this. For row 4 you're going to increase, because we're increasing on row 2. Row 3 no increase, row 4 is going to be an increase, so you're going to chain 1 and turn, and into the very first stitch you're going to go into your half double crochet stitch. And because we're increasing, you're inserting 2 half double crochets into that stitch, so you have the 1, 2, and right after you're going to just go ahead and do one half double crochet into every stitch across. Remember that you're only increasing on one side of the panel and not on both sides, so when you go to the end of this row you're just going to insert one half double crochet into that last stitch, chain 1, turn, come all the way up, and because it's row 5 you're not increasing, you're going to just do one row of half double crochet with no increase. For row 6 you're going to chain 1 into the very first stitch with 2 half double crochets, and you're going to just repeat this until you have the half of your bust measurement. To know exactly how much you need to make this first part of the panel, we are going to be using the tape. So you're going to use your tape to take your bust measurement, and this measurement is going to be divided by 4 actually. So instead of dividing this by 2, you're going to divide this by 4, because the panel is worked in, we'll actually work in the front and the panel separately, but the front panel is also worked not separately, but there's a first side of it and there's a second side of it, and of course because it's divided by 2 it has to be at the center, right? So you're going to take your bust measurement, and I would suggest you make this free because it's a sweater. So mine is going to be 44 inches, but you guys can see that I have a gap right here because I want this to be not oversized, but I want it to be a little bit more. I want a room for me to just play around with. So you're going to now divide that particular measurement by 4. I'll say divide it by 2 just so it's easy. So in my case, 44 is divided by 2 will be 22 inches, and the 22 inches will also be divided by 2, which will eventually leave me with 11 inches. So for the very first part of this panel, which involves the increase part, I am going to make my panel until I have a total of 11 inches. So do that with yours and I'll see you guys when it's complete. Hi guys, so I have the very first half of my panel with me. You guys can see the increasing that goes all the way up there. So this is going to be the center, and this is going to be one part of the shoulders. For reference, I'm just going to take the measurement so you guys can see exactly how wide this is. So you can see it's 10.5 inches, but it's a half double crochet stitch, so it obviously stretches all the way to 11 or even more. I just don't want to stretch this out. I did a total of 32 rows, just so in case you're making the same size with me and you want to use my own amount of rows, you want to make the same size. So this is a total of 32 rows, and this leaves me with a total of 11 inches. So now we are going to cut off the yarn from the side, and we are going to reattach the yarn, because again, like I said, this is the center of the panel. So because we already have the side, we have to do the same thing on the opposite side. I'm going to reattach my yarn at the very bottom of the panel, and I'm just going to make my way into the very first stitch, and I'm going to grab the yarn. attach that with a secure knot. And from here on, we are going to do the same thing, which is I usually just go into that very same stitch. And this is my working yarn. I'm just going to grab the working yarn and pull through. And of course, because we're starting a new row, you're going to chain one for your turning chain. And we are going to work our way up until the opposite side. Because I have two excess yarn, I'm going to just grab this two and pass this underneath, because I want to go over those two with my next few stitches. So to do that, I'm going to yarn over, go into this very first stitch with my half double crochet stitch, and because we don't have a back and a front loop on this one, you're just going to go into the one loop, because this is where we started the row, right? You're just going to go into any loop, honestly, and then you're going to do your half double crochet stitch, but also want to make sure you're not skipping any stitch, because again guys, you don't want to make sure you shorten the length of your panel. So you're just going to go ahead and insert one half double crochet like I am doing until you get to the very top of the panel. I'm just going to cut off this excess yarn, because after a few stitches it's secure and I don't have to do this anymore. So I'm just going to repeat what I just mentioned by inserting one half double crochet into every stitch until I make my way to the very top. Right here I have come to the very end of this very first row. So again, just so I can explain this, what we're going to do now is just going to do the same amount of rows that we did on this side is what we are going to repeat on the opposite side, which means this first row that I just did is going to be my row 1, and I have 31 more rows to do, because on this side I had 32 rows, right? So the very first row is now going to be an increase row, because again we are only increasing on even rows. So row 2, row 4, row 6, row 8, row 12, row 10. Those are the rows that we will be increasing on. So this is going to be my row 1, which means the next row is going to be my row 2. And also we are still increasing on just the side of the panel and not the side of the panel. So keep that in mind as well. So what you're going to do from here on, chain 1 and turn. And we are going to repeat the same pattern, which is 2 double crochet into the very first stitch, making sure you're going into the back loop of that first stitch with your 2 double crochet, and from there on 1 double crochet until you get to the very end of the row. And guys, that is what you're going to repeat until you have the same amount of rows you have on this side on the opposite side. Oh, it's so cold. Anyway, I just finished my front panel and this is exactly what it looks like. You guys can see that the V neckline literally goes from one side to one side, and at this point it should fit you like this, just like this. It might be a little bit more wide compared to what you guys see from the final picture, but obviously we're going to fix this. So you should have something like this, and this is what you're going to repeat for you to have your back panel. I also wanted to mention, like, after getting to this point, if you feel like you want it to be a little more oversized, which you can definitely do, all I'll suggest you do is add your rows at each side of the panel, but you are not going to be decreasing anymore. You're not going to be increasing anymore. You are just going to repeat rows. If you decide to do 5, 10, whatever size you decide to do, if you want to add more room, but obviously that is optional, because at the very beginning with the measurement I did say you should add more, about 4 inches like I did. But if you want it to be a little bit more wider after finishing the front panel, if you think it's not wide enough, then do that. So I'm going to repeat the same exact step for my opposite panel, and I'll see you guys when it's complete. Right here I have both panels complete. I did want to mention that I ended up making one panel a little bit longer, because I wanted the back panel of this pattern to be a little bit longer than the front. But that is optional. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. But because I'm going to leave an opening at the side, I just wanted the front panel to be a little bit shorter than the back panel. So at this point we are going to attach both of the panels together, and to do that all you're going to do is you are going to take your armpit hole measurement of the front and the back panel. You will be needing two measurements to do that, and that is obviously going to be optional. So there are two options. You can either close both sides of the panel entirely, so basically from the armpit area downwards, or you can be like me and leave an opening, which I think is super cute. So if you want to do that, all you have to do is you're going to take your armpit hole measurement, and to do that all I do is just make a circle around my measurement tape, and I'll just pass my arm around the tape like this. And you can adjust this depending on how tight you want the sleeve to be, or depending on how loose you want that to be. And whatever measurement you get by doing this is what you're going to divide by 2. So if you have 20, you're going to divide that amount by 2, and you will eventually end up with 10. In my case, I am going to make mine 16 inches, which means I will be using 8 as my measurement for the next step. And from there, the next measurement you're going to need is basically from where your armpit stops, right underneath your armpit, up until wherever. Again, I said if you want to make the both sides of your panel close, you can just skip this entire measurement because you don't need this step. All you have to do is, after you mark your armpit hole measurement, you're going to single crochet both panels until you get to the very end. But if you want to, all you're going to do is you're going to grab the tape, and you can either take this measurement from your shoulders upwards, so basically from your shoulders to wherever you want the opening to start. So again, the sweater, depending on the length you decide to go for, is going to be up until wherever you want it to be. So I think mine is going to be about 14 inches. I decided to make mine, I think, 14 inches. So that would eventually stop right where this high-waisted leggings stops on my body. So the rest of it is going to be an opening. You guys will understand later in the next clip when we actually put this to work, because now it might be a little bit confusing. So when you get that measurement, you are going to be dividing it by 2. So in my case, I am going to use 16 for my armpit hole measurement, and when I divide that by 2, I will have a total of 8 inches. So from the upper part, which is basically where the increase is, you are going to take a measurement of 8 inches downwards. So right from the very top, 8 inches downwards should be about this. I am going to mark that with a stitch marker. So again, 8 inches downwards, and I'm going to mark that 8 inches with a marker. By the way, I'm marking both panels with this yarn, and right there I have it marked. So right there there's an opening, and right there there's an opening. Because I want the pattern comes with an opening at the side, I already know that I want it to be 12 inches downwards. So basically from upwards down to the side is going to be 12 inches. So which means from here downwards it's going to be 12 or maybe 14 inches in this case. I'm not too sure. Honestly, this depends on what you actually are going to wear this sweater with. If you're going to wear this with a high-waisted skirt or pants, then you can go up. But if you want to wear this with low waist, then you can go down, depending on you. I'm going to show you guys how you can take the measurement for that. But I think I'm going to eventually end mine with 14 inches instead of 12. 12 is a little bit too short. So 14 inches will eventually end around this area, which means I'm going to grab the second panel, of course, and I'm going to make sure I align that, and I'm going to reattach my yarn right there. From here on, I'm just going to grab a working yarn, so I am going to grab my working yarn, and I'm going to make a knot where I marked my 14 inches. and I'm just going to single crochet my way up to where I marked my very armpit hole measurement. So from the top to where I marked my armpit hole measurement, I am going to single crochet my way all the way up to that point. You can use a slip stitch for this, you can use a needle, whatever you want to get done, you want to use for this method, please do. Last stitch with just few more stitches just to make sure my stitches are secure, and from there on you are going to cut off your yarn, and there you have your seam sealed. And if you open this, you can see you should have something like this. From here on, what you're going to do is you're just going to fold that back, making sure that the panels align together perfectly. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach the upper part of this panel. To do that, I already have 2 strings on, which makes it super easy. All I'm going to do is make a knot with those 2. If you don't, all you have to do is grab a working yarn and insert the working yarn in between those 2 panels and make a secure knot. So I'm just going to secure the knot twice just to make sure it's super secure. And right there you have the armpit hole. If you want this to be more secure, all you're going to do is grab your crochet hook, go into that top stitch, the top stitch on the opposite panel. You can grab 1 yarn or 2. I'm just going to grab both, and I'm going to make a slip knot, chain 1, and that is way more secure than the first one. Like you can see right there, it is way more secure. And this is what you're going to do for the opposite side of the panel, because at this point this side is sealed and this side is going to be the same exact step. So you're going to take the measurement. Well, after doing the first side, you honestly don't need your measurement tape for the next step. All you have to do is fold the panel into 2, mark where you did this up until this edge, and repeat the same thing and do the same thing on the shoulders as well. So do that and I'll show you guys what it looks like before we go to the next step. Hi guys, so this is a panel review. I attached both sides together and this is what it is supposed to look like. So if yours look different, I think you need to adjust that. But this is what you should have. You should have the panel falling off your shoulders like this. And now we are going to work on the sleeve before we work on the exciting part of this. So we are going to just repeat the same step after double crochet. But let's go to the table so I can show you guys for the beginners. But this is what you should have so far, and this is what it should look like at the back, just the same way it looks at the front. And I also wanted to show you guys the split on the side will give you a very fancy look as well. So if you decide to do that, we are in the same group. So to get started with the sleeve, you are going to make a slip knot and chain a chain that is as long as your sleeve length, desired sleeve length, and that is basically from where your off the shoulder stops up until wherever you want the sleeve to stop. To do that, you're going to chain whatever amount you want to chain. I ended up chaining 80 for my own desired sleeve length. So after your chain, your desired chain, you are going to chain an extra one, and that is going to be a turning chain. And from there you're going to go into the second chain with your half double crochet stitch, and just what we did for the front and the back panel, you are going to go ahead and insert 1 half double crochet until you get to the very end of the row. And this is what you are going to do with no repeat and no increase and no decrease. So you're going to repeat 1 half double crochet row, and for row 2 you're going to go ahead and chain 1, turn, and into the back loop, just the way we did for the front and the back panel. You are going to insert 1 half double crochet into every stitch. The only difference between this panel, sleeve panel, and the front and the back is we are not going to be decreasing. So you want to make sure you are inserting 1 half double crochet into every stitch, so you're not skipping any stitch, but at the same time you are not inserting more than 1 half double crochet into any stitch, right? So you're not increasing, at the same time you're not decreasing. And don't forget to go into the back loop of your stitches from the second row, just so you have the same exact pattern for the back and the front panel, and you are going to repeat that for your desired sleeve width. So basically the measurement you used for your armpit hole, in my case I used a total of 16 inches. So I'm going to make this rows of half double crochet until I have a 16 inches wide panel, and I'm going to come back and show you guys what it looks like, so we can go ahead and attach that to the pattern that we already have, the back and the front panel. So you have your sleeve complete. It should look like this. Yours might be longer or shorter than mine, honestly, depending on the size you're making. So now you're going to fold this panel by 2, and you are going to grab your front and your back panel. So right here I have my front and my back panel. I'm going to lay this flat. You're going to lay your front and your back panel flat on your table, and making sure the seam is on facing you, so your seam is not inside but it's outside. Then you're going to grab your sleeve. Mind you, the sleeve is still open, we have not attached the sides together yet. Now you are going to grab the sleeve and put that inside the panel. So fold your sleeve into 2, and one side you are going to insert inside the armpit area of your panel, and I like to just go underneath and make sure I balance this and make sure everything is even. But you want to make sure that the open side of your sleeve aligns with the side of the panels. So you're going to grab one side of your sleeve, so the sleeve is still open, one side of the sleeve is, you're going to grab one side of the sleeve and you are going to attach that to the armpit area on the panels. So just like that, you're going to grab one side of the sleeve, you are going to attach that into the panel and make a secure knot. So you want to insert your crochet hook into the panel and then into the sleeve and make a secure knot. You want to make sure the knot is super secure, so if you have to go in with double knots, make sure you do so. And from here on, we are going to single crochet our way around the sleeve, but you can use whatever method you want to use for this particular attachment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right into that same available space where I attached my yarn, and I'm going to just grab the yarn. I like to chain 1, and I'm going to make my way up until the next space, available space on the panel, the next available space on the sleeve, and I will single crochet those two together. So next available space on the panel and the next on the sleeve, single crochet those two together. And because you did 8 inches, I did 16 inches long, and this 8 on each side is also up to 16. This should be super easy to attach together because they are the same size. So I'm just going to carefully make my way around with single crochets, making sure I'm single crocheting both of the sleeve and the panels together until I get to the very beginning, which is this opposite side of the panel. So right here I just make my way back up until that very edge. So now I'm going to go right inside and take off the sleeve, and this is what you should have. There is still an opening right here with the sleeve. Now all you're going to do is just single crochet your way down from this area downwards, and then you have one sleeve attached, and you're going to just repeat the same exact step to get both of your sleeve. So the same exact step that you used for creating this sleeve is the same exact step you are going to use for creating your opposite sleeve, and of course you're going to use the same attachment method as well, and then you will have your sleeve complete. So I am just going to now go ahead and slightly take my way up until the side. So now that I have my yarn still attached on the side, all I am going to do in the spot from this point on is just going to make my way into this very first stitch on the sleeve, very first stitch on the opposite side of the sleeve, and I'm going to single crochet that. This is super easy, guys. just repeat this, make your way all the way down. I'll also suggest you align your panel while you're single crocheting these two, because you don't want to have an uneven sleeve at the very end. Do that, do the same thing for the opposite side, and I'll see you guys with the next step. So at this point you should have your sleeve complete and attached to the panel. So now we are going to work the band panel around the off shoulder part of the sweater, right? So we want, at this point the sweater is a little bit so wide, so if you wear this and put this on, it might be falling off your shoulders. So we are going to go around this band, around this edge of the shoulders with a band, and that is going to just make it smaller. You are going to go ahead and make a slip knot and chain a total of 7 actually. You're going to chain a total of 7. You can make this longer if you choose to. So you're just going to make a slip knot and chain a total of 7 chains. And after your 7 chain, you're going to yarn over and go into the second chain with your first stitch. And basically repeat 1 half double crochet into every chain across, and this should leave you with a total of 6 half double crochet stitches. And after your first half double crochet stitch, you're going to chain 1 and just do the same thing by inserting 1 half double crochet into the back loop of each stitch until you get to the very end. And guys, you are going to repeat this pattern until you have the full bust measurement actually. But then also you can actually just put this across your shoulders to check how wide it actually fits. And also I'll say you do this in a stretch form, so while you're putting this across your body, you want to make sure that it's stretching. And also while you're using your bust measurement to measure this band, you also want to make sure that you use this in a stretch form. So basically stretch the band until it gets to your desired bust, your bust measurement, and that is going to be how long the band is going to be before we attach this to the panel. So repeat that and I'll see you guys when I have mine complete so we can move to the next step. So right here I have my band and this is how long it is. All I did was just did the same half double crochet into the back loop until I have this wide. And now we are going to go ahead and attach this to the panel. So I'm just going to end off my last row just to make sure it's secure before I do the attachment. I'm just going to secure that with a chain. So now you are going to grab the panel and lay this flat. So you want to make sure the back panel is facing on the table and the front panel is facing you. Have something like this. The back panel is facing wherever you decide to make the back panel is facing down while the front panel is facing you. And now we are, by the way, I still have the seam on the outside, which means when I turn this pullover or the sweater over, it's going to be on the right side. I want you to keep it at this side with the seam outside. So now that we attach the band, the seam is going to align with the seam that we have going on the sides as well. So now you're going to grab your band and you can decide however you want this band to be, but for the reference of this video and if you want to make the same design, this two edge of the band is going to fall at the very front of your panel. That's the reason why I asked that you make sure the front panel is facing you. So we are going to attach this. Again, the band is a little bit smaller than the circumference around the shoulders, but the reason is because I want to make sure the band fits my shoulders, so the sweater will not be falling off my shoulders the entire time, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and attach this band to the sweater like I mentioned earlier. And is straightened, making sure you have your band is literally straightened, guys, just what I just mentioned, and you are going to find the center of your sweater. From here you can see that the center is right here for me, which is obvious. So I'm just going to find that very first stitch that starts from the opposite side of the panel, and that is where I'm going to slip stitch my first stitch into the band with. And from here on, I'm not working my way on this side of the band. I'm going to work on the length side, which means I will be single crocheting. Guys, see, I will be single crocheting my band all around until I get to the opposite side. And because I'm right-handed, I somehow need to turn this so it can be easy for me to do this attachment. Hope you guys can still see what I'm doing, but from here on, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a space on the sweater, a space on the band, and I'm going to single crochet these two together. Do that with a space on the band, a space on the sweater. Just basically make sure you're making your way up. I also suggest for you to have an even attachment, I'll suggest that you maybe grab a stitch marker and mark the band around, just so you make sure that you're not giving too much than you have literally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the band here with a stitch marker, stretch the band and mark this side with a stitch marker. Just basically mark 1, 2, 3, 4 points, so I know that while I'm working from this side to this side, I have to stretch the band as I go, just to make sure I don't have way too much on this side than I have on the opposite side. So grab stitch markers and do that. And where's my last stitch marker? Did I just lose it? I did. I'm just gonna grab another stitch marker, and now I'm going to just mark this, basically just grabbing the edge and marking that at the center of the back. And this is literally just going to be a guide for you to know how much band you have to attach on this side to this side, from this side to this side, from this side to this side, or else you will stretch your band too much, and at the end you might probably have way too little to attach to the last set of the panel, right? And that's what you want to avoid. So I'm just going to just now go back into single crocheting the band onto the panel by just grabbing one available space on the band, one available space on the panel, and single crochet these two together. And as always, you can also use a needle for this method, or you can use a slip stitch, but I just love the outcome of single crochet all the time. And that is what I'm going to repeat all around, carefully repeat that all around, and I'll see you guys at the very end. So I have the band single crochet around the panel, and now it looks super awkward. It looks super awkward, but we're going to fix it. So we have these two edges now that we need to fix. So what I'm going to do is I still have my yarn attached to the side of the panel, so I have to eventually single crochet this to the side. But the mistake that I did was I should have done this at the very beginning. So now I'm going to struggle a little, but I think I can get it fixed. So now we are going to slantly single crochet this edge of the panel of the band to the panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this and slantly bend that to this seam area, right? So because I still have my yarn attached, it's super easy. I'm just going to make my way up until the opposite side where the seam is, and I'm going to go into the first available space on the band and single crochet that too. I am going to make my way up until the next step, the next seam area, and I'm going to single crochet that as well. Just what we've been doing, but the only difference is we are single crocheting above the seam and we are single crocheting around the edge of the band, just so we can seal that edge. So you're going to repeat this because we have only 6 after double crochet stitches. We don't have to do much, we only have to do 6 single slip stitch or single crochet, whatever you're using, to get that side attached. So right there I'm coming to the last side, the last space on the band, which means I'm complete, but I usually like to go back into that last space with a slip stitch after my last single crochet, just so I have that secure. And of course the tension is going to be a little bit too tight, but I always find my way around that. And I'm just going to slip stitch, chain one, and cut off my yarn. So now we have this edge, and it's not looking cute at all, but I'm going to turn the entire sweater over, and then I can find the solution, guys. Then we can find the solution. And at this point you should have something like this, and of course we need to fix this band. So what I think I'm going to do in this case is, if I fix it like this, it will be fine, and that is exactly how it's supposed to be, but I don't want the seam to be on this side. So I think what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to still bend the seam over, the sweater over, and I'm going to attempt to do that inside. But I'm basically, I hope you guys can see what I'm doing, right? So I am going to attempt to single crochet this edge this way, right? But I want the seam to be this side, which means it's going to be a little bit tricky for me to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the edge of the band, literally the edge of that side that I need to single crochet, and I'm going to lay, guys, I hope you guys can see, and I'm going to lay this flat and just make sure it goes into a space. And right there I'm going to insert my crochet hook, grab the yarn, and make a knot. I'm sure there is another easy way to do this. I don't know why I did not do that at the very beginning. And I'm just going to make a knot. But then this yarn, so there's no knot now, there's just a yarn that goes through this and goes through this. So now I'm going to grab my crochet hook, pass this underneath, and I'm going to grab this excess yarn and take this back, because again, like I said, guys, I don't want the seam to be on the outside of the panel. I want it to be inside. So now I'm going to now make the knot, which is going to be inwards. And I think if you have a needle for this, you are safe, because you can easily just do the invisible stitch and seal this. So right now we have an opening there, but we're going to fix that. Now that we have that, what we can do now is single crochet this. So when this turn over like that, the seam is going to be inside and not outside. Super simple. So now I'm just going to take off some yarn. If you're confused around this point, I'm so sorry. I wish I had done this another way so you guys can exactly see what I'm doing, but yeah, it happens. Sometimes I just get stuck while I'm creating. So I'm just going to grab the yarn and take that yarn outside so I can single crochet the next part. So I'm just going to turn this because I'm right-handed, and that will just be super easy for me to work with. So again, you guys can see there is an opening right there, or like it should, because it's supposed to fit my shoulders, and you can do so as well. So if you need any adjustment, you need to adjust anything, then you can go ahead and do that before we move to the final step, because after that final step you won't be able to adjust the size of the band again, and I'm sure you would not want to make a sweater that is too wide for your shoulders, because then it will be falling off the entire time. Hi guys, so this is what the sweater looks like on. I think mine looks okay. I don't think it's too big, and this is what it looks like from the back. It is not too wide, so you should have something like this, something a little bit more snug if you want that to be a little bit more fitted. This is what this side looks like. Again, it doesn't look entirely bad. I wished I'd done something to it, but I don't have time is really not on my side. I need to finish the sweater before I abandon it, because I'm getting frustrated. But this is what it should look like. Now we are going to start the neck panel. So now you're going to need the measurement from, I have a bra on now, but initially you should not actually have a bra on, but you're going to take the length measurement from here up until this part of your body, so basically from here to here, and mine is 5 inches, and I'm guessing for most body type it should be 5, but if it's not, then obviously use the measurement. But you're going to take the measurement from here to there, and you're going to also take the measurement from here to this other part of your bra. So putting the bra on will actually help you to get this measurement right. So from here to here you're going to take the width measurement, and from here to here you're going to take the length measurement, and we are going to need that to work on the next part of the panel. So do that, take the measurement, and I'll see you guys at the table. But to start the neck panel, it is a little bit more complicated than the actual panel, because we need to do some complicated things, but I'm going to find a way to explain this so you guys can actually get the technique. What we're going to do is, now that you have the length and the breadth of this panel, you are going to we want to make sure that the panel is wide, but the wideness the lower part has to be wider than the upper part, because the moment your body goes up, it gets smaller around your neck, because this panel is eventually going to fit around your neck, right? But then from the area where your bust area upwards to your neck area, I'm sure for most people it goes up like this, which means we want to make sure the panel at the lower part is wide, but then when it comes up to the upper part, it's a little bit smaller, right? But because we're working this panel from the left to the right and not from the upper parts, from the lower part to the upper part, we actually have to do a little bit of decreasing or making the roll shorter, which you guys will see. So with your length, mine is going to be 5, so all I'm going to do is chain 20. So once you chain 1 as an additional chain, from here on you're going to repeat the same half double crochet by going into the second chain with the half double crochet stitch. And basically repeating 1 half double crochet until you get to the end of the row. You should have something like this after your first row. From here on you are going to go ahead and chain 1 and repeat your second row, which is 1 half double crochet into the back loop and 1 half double crochet into every stitch across, with no increasing and no decreasing. But then at the end of row 2, we are going to do our first decrease, which is inserting an additional half double crochet stitch into that last stitch. And just the same as the pattern, we will be decreasing just on one, we will be increasing just on one part of the panel, and on this opposite side we are not doing any increasing at the end of the row. So for row 3, you're going to chain 1 and turn. Now right into this very first stitch you are going to insert 2 double crochets, and that is automatically a second increase for this neck pattern. And then from there on you are going to go ahead and do 1 half double crochet into every row. Whenever I say double crochet, guys, please excuse me, I mean half double crochet. So you're going to do 1 half double crochet until you get to the end of the row, and automatically you can see that the lower part is getting longer, and this is what we're going to repeat until we have the half of this pattern. Is also works just like the panel, so you have 1 half, and then from the opposite panel you are going to repeat the other half of the pattern. Honestly, for row 3 we are going to do something a little bit different. So counting up, because we already did an additional increase on row 2, which gives us up to, in my case I had 20 stitches in total after the first row. So adding 1 additional stitch actually gave me a total of 21, and for row 3, because I added another additional stitch, I have a total of 22 stitches at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count 12, because you're going to divide that 22 by 2 and 11. That would be 11 in my case. So I'm going to count 11 stitches upwards, which is automatically there, and that is my 11th stitch, which means from here right to the very top I have an additional 11 stitch. So this is the center of the panel, right? This is actually my center. So what we're going to do from this case is we are going to go into this next stitch, which is supposed to be the 12th stitch, with a slip stitch. And after the slip stitch, you are going to automatically turn your panel, chain 1, and go right into that same stitch with another slip stitch. So right into that same stitch, you are going to go with a slip stitch, and from there on you are just going to work after double crochet into the back loop into the next stitch and 1 up until you get to the very end of the row. And because this side is a decreasing row, we are going increasing row, sorry, we are going to increase into that last stitch by inserting 2 after double crochet stitches all into that same space. So you're going to go into that last stitch with your after double crochet stitch and go back right into the stitch with another after double crochet stitch, and right there you have 2 after double crochet stitches, and that is going to be a third increase for this pattern. From here on you are going to chain 1 and turn and into this very first after double crochet stitch with 2. So you're increasing on every row when it comes to the neck panel, keep that in mind. And then from there on you are just going to repeat 1 after double crochet until you get to that half of the panel, basically right there. So coming up until the panel, until the half of the panel, we have where we did a slip stitch, right? So remember we chained 1 and did a slip stitch right there. What you're going to do is you're going to do half double crochet stitch, but then you're going to go into that slip stitch space, and then instead of doing your half double crochet, we are going to go into this space because we want to work our way up. That's where we have more rows at the very end, which means this is the lower part, but then the upper part is going to have smaller rows, which means the upper part should fit your neck as you go. You guys will see later on. So you're going to insert your crochet again, you're going to yarn over, insert your crochet into that last stitch, which is a slip stitch, and then you have 3 loops, but then automatically you are going to go into this space again, and now you have 4 loops, basically 1 2 3 4. Now you're going to grab the yarn and pull through, and you have more 4 loops, so you have still have 4 loops. You're going to just yarn over and pull through all 4 of the loops, and right there you just did another half double crochet, even though it looks a bit weird. So now you're just going to go into every stitch on the upper parts with 1 half double crochet stitch. You have something like this, and it looks a bit weird, but you guys will see the reason why we're doing this at the very end. So you should have something looking like this. From here on you are going to chain 1, and because we are not increasing on the side, you are just going to insert 1 half double crochet into the back loop, into that very first stitch, and just make your way down this row with 1 half double crochet. Again, you're going to repeat 1 half double crochet until you get to the very end, and because this is our increase row, increase area, basically you are going to insert an additional half double crochet into that last stitch, and that automatically completes another row. So guys, this is what you're going to repeat. So you are just going to do this pattern. So now that we're going to go up, let me show you guys what I mean by that. So now you're going to chain 1 and turn for the next row, and this, in this case, I can't even tell how many rows, but 1 2 3 4 5 6 on the lower part, 1 2 3 4 on the upper part. Guys, you can see that the amount of rows on the lower part is bigger than the amount of rows on the upper part, and this is exactly what I was explaining at the very beginning. So because this is my increase side, I'm going to insert 2 after double crochet into that very first stitch and just make my way up until I get to this area where we actually did the first. So you can mark this area if it's easy for you to know where to stop, or you can automatically just feel it as well, because there you have a lump or a loop that goes like this, so you know that's the same area you need to stop. So from here on, you are just going to make your way up until you get to that area. When you get there, because you can't really count your stitches anymore because we already are adding the amount of stitches we're doing on the lower part. So if you say you want to count at the center, you might kind of end up there or there, and then it doesn't align with this first one we did. So the first center is very important because then you're going to use that to mark the next few stitches. So automatically mine ends right there, which means in this next space I am going to insert a slip stitch, turn, or chain one and turn, and into this very first stitch again with a slip stitch. And right after that first slip stitch, you are going to insert one half double crochet all the way to the end. And of course, into that last stitch, you are going to insert 2 half double crochets because you're increasing on every row that comes to the very end of this part of the panel. So again, like I was saying, I have 8 rows at the lower part and 4 rows at the upper part. So you can tell that the lower part is double the size of the upper part, guys. So now we are going to just repeat what we've just done. So whenever you get to this part where you did the increasing, you are just going to start the row and make sure you make your way all the way up, and that is what you're going to repeat. Remember, I did mention that you guys have to take the length and the width measurement, so you're going to just repeat this until you have the half of your width measurement. Mine is eventually going to be 11 inches, which means I have to make this 5.5 inches. So when I finish the opposite panel, the opposite side, it's going to eventually make way up to 11 inches in total. So you are just going to repeat the same method until you have 5.5 inches. I'm guessing that will be the same for every size, but if it's not, you can obviously adjust this. I already told you guys what to do. You can obviously adjust that to it. The only difference is when I have 5 inches, for the last half inches, I am just going to do 2 half double crochet row, normal half double crochet row, which you guys will see later on in the clip. So now that I'm coming to the top, I'm going to go into that last space, which is this space with my half double crochet. And again, like I said, you are just going to insert your crochet hook and go into the stitch right there, and you're going to grab the yarn, pull through, and whatever amount you have, you're just going to yarn over and pull through that entire loop. So now you're just going to work your way up to end of this row 9, and on the upper part this is row 5, and you should have something like this. So I did a total of 15 rows, I think, from my own side. So I'm just going to repeat this all over until I have that amount, and I'll show you guys the next step. So right here you can see that I have way more rows compared to the last time. So I'm just going to count. I have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 rows on the upper part, and on the lower part I have 2 4 6 8 10 12 14 15 rows. So 9 rows on the upper part, 15 rows on the lower part. But then like I mentioned, when it actually came to this last 2 rows, I just did increasing on the lower part because you want to keep increasing, but then you can see that the last 2 rows goes all the way up, and you have to repeat that as well. And this should be about 5, and if I take the measurement of this, it should be about 5.5 inches on the lower part. So you can see that it's 5 inches, but of course, because this is stretchy, it will eventually stretch up to that size. And for the upper part, you can see that it's 3.5 inches. So this is what is going to give you the shape around the neck, just so you have this part that is wide and the neck part is going to be low. So what I'm going to do now is repeat the same exact step that I just did for the opposite part, because you want to make sure, again, like I said, the panel goes like this. And to do that, you are just going to chain 1 and turn, and you're going to repeat a double crochet after double crochet row, because my last 2 stitches was half double crochet stitches, right? So I'm just going to repeat that until I get to the very end of the row. So right here I am coming to the very end of the row. What I'm going to do is, just so you guys can carefully see, is I'm going to mark my 15th row right here, so you know that is where my opposite part was finished. So I obviously need to repeat the same 15 rows on the side, but we're going to repeat the same thing as well. But what we're going to do is we are going to be decreasing now instead of increasing, because the increasing did lead us to this way. So we want to decrease so it can lead us all the way up to the opposite side of the panel as well. So what we're going to do that is, right here I have my last 2 stitches. So if you can see carefully, I have 1 and 2. I am now going to just go ahead and decrease those 2 stitches by going into the first. When I have 3 yarn, 3 loop, I'm going to just automatically go into that last stitch, yarn over and pull through, and now I have 4 loops, so I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. And right there I just did my first decrease. Again, you are going to just repeat the increase pattern, but this time around you're going to decrease for every row until you have your 15th row. So in total you should have a total of 30 rows. Which means for the next step, all I'm going to do, because I'm decreasing on this side, you're not chaining anything, you're just automatically going to turn, and because of the decrease you're going to skip your very first after hook crochet stitch, and you are going to go into the second with your first after hook crochet on this row, and make your way all the way up with 1 after hook crochet each. So after the next 2 rows, we are now going to get into the actual pattern, because remember this last 2 rows were just a normal double crochet row, and that is what we just repeated on the opposite side. So now we have to repeat from this side up until this side of the panel. So to do that, you're going to chain 1 and turn, and insert to half double crochet stitch right into that very first stitch, and make your way up until the very end of the panel, guys. You're still doing that because we're starting from the top, and we're only going to do the same loop when we're coming upwards. So repeat this until the end. Don't forget to decrease at the very edge, because you want to decrease at every row, because we were increasing on every row. Going to the edge, like I said, I'm going to decrease my last 2 stitches to end off this row. And right there I just ended off my 3rd row on the opposite side. We are going to go ahead and turn because we're decreasing again, and now you're going to skip the very first stitch, and into the second you are going to insert your first double crochet stitch. And skipping that first stitch automatically decreases for you, by the way. So from here on you are going to work your way up until you get to this side. So again, you're just going to work your way by feeling where the loop is around the panel, because if you cannot count your stitches into half, because if you do you're going to end up there. So all you're going to do is you're going to just feel, and automatically that leaves me with this area. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be too straight, so don't overthink the fact that it might be, but just feel it and make sure it's a little bit more aligns with the other increasing that you did, so it aligns perfectly. And right there I am at that area. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to single crochet slip stitch into that stitch. Right there is going to be my last stitch, so I'm going to slip stitch, chain 1 and turn, and into this very first stitch again I'm going to slip stitch, just the same way we've been doing. And there I'm going to insert 1 after hook crochet all the way to the end. And of course, because we are decreasing, I am going to decrease my last 2 stitches at the end of that particular row. And it's actually coming out well. Now it looks like a shell. Coming to the end, I am going to decrease my last 2 stitches like I mentioned earlier together. And right there I just finished another row, so I can now count how many rows I have. So on the upper part I have 1, 2, 3. So remember on this side I had 9, and then on the lower part I had 15. So I'm going to just basically repeat. So I have 3, now I have 3, 1, 2, 3, and on the lower part I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now for the next row, you're going to turn because you're decreasing again. You're skipping your first stitch, and into the second you are going to go with a half double crochet and make your way all the way up this time around because we already have a first loop. So you're going to go all the way up, just the same thing you've been doing. And honestly guys, that's what you're going to repeat. Just remember that at the very beginning we have 2 rows that goes straight, just the same way we have 2 rows that goes at the end and at the side as well. I hope you guys understand exactly what I mean. So right from the very beginning we have 2 rows, even though we're increasing on the side, but we still have 2 rows that go all the way up. And at the end of this one part of the panel, I also have 2 rows that goes all the way up fully, and then on the beginning 2 rows that goes all the way up before we start the loop of increasing. And then you're just going to repeat the same thing until you have 9 on the upper part, 15 on the lower part, and you just remember that your last 2 rows to give you 15 and 9 is going to be just a full row that goes all the way up. I don't want to show the entire process because this is going to be super long, so if you get lost along the way, feel free to ask me questions and I'll make time to answer your questions. But I also have the pattern available, which will be with all the details that you will need, with all the instructions as well, so you can take your time to go through all the pattern that will be made for different sizes actually. So I'm just going to repeat this, the same step that I've been doing until I have my first panel complete. And this is what it should look at the very end. So I'm just going to cut off my yarn, and I usually just chain 1 to end this off, and you should have something like this as the final look. From here on you're just going to repeat the same step. When you have both, you should have it looking like this. Again, make sure it's the same length and the same width because it's just the pattern. It just has to be the same length and the same width, and you should have something like this, 2 of these. So now we are going to work the panel that goes around the neck area. This is obviously, I'm still going to use my 4mm for this, and you're going to just make a slip knot and chain however long you want this to be. I am just going to chain the half that I chained for the band for the previous panel, so in my case I'm going to chain 11. After chaining 11, you are going to go into the second chain with a single crochet. A single crochet is basically insert your crochet hook, grab the yarn, pull through. When you have 2 loops, you're just going to yarn over and pull through all 2 loops. Again, go into the next chain with your crochet hook, grab the yarn and pull through. And when you have 2 loops, you are going to yarn over and pull through all 2 loops. And repeat 1 single crochet until you get to the end. At the end of the row, you should have a total of 10 single crochet stitches. And this is what you should have after the first row. For row 2, chain 1 and turn. Into the very first single crochet, you are going into the back loop with your first single crochet, and just the same way we did the half double crochet stitches, you are going to repeat this. The only difference is this is going to be a single crochet row, which means you probably need more rows for you to get a good width, a good length, to go around your neck. But you're just going to repeat the same exact step by going into the back loop of each stitch with 1 single crochet until you get to the very end of the row. And at the end of the row, you want to make sure you chain 1 because that is going to be your turning chain. And also want to make sure you're not skipping any stitch. So if you have to mark your stitches or count your stitches to get the same exact amount, then do so, because you want to have a very straight panel. So do that, and I'll see you guys when I have a good amount complete. And with a good amount, I mean something like this. Again, because of the single crochet stitches, this is very stretchy. That's the reason why I decided to go for a single crochet instead of a half double crochet. Now you are going to grab these 2 panels because we are going to attach the band around this panel right here. So this is what we should have at the very end. Again, this side should flare like this. If you have to stretch this a bit, just play around with the stretchiness of the panels just so you can keep the shape and make sure it doesn't look a bit awkward. So you are now going to just go ahead and attach the two ends of this panel with a single crochet, just the same way I've been doing for the entire pattern. So I'm just going to go right there and attach the two ends of it with a single crochet stitch. And just for reference, you just want to make sure that this band is wide enough to fit your neck. So mine is 6.5 inches, but again it stretches all the way up, so keep that in mind. 6.5 inches on one side, which means in total it's 13 inches, by the way. So you should have something like this. So now we are just simply going to attach this band around the neck. So the seam has to be at the center of the back, wherever you decide that you want the center to be, the back to be and the front. You're going to decide that on both panels, and then the center is going to basically be at that side. So now we have like a little sweater going on right here, which I think is super cute. So what you're going to do now is, I still have my yarn attached to the band. I am just going to insert my crochet hook right into that band, and I am going to single crochet slip stitch that into the panel. So you can also count your stitches just so you have the center of this very first one. So let me take this off. I am going to count my stitches, which means 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So this center is literally where the center is. So right there I am going to slip stitch with my working yarn, and I just pull that through. And because I want the seam to be where the seam is on the side, all I'm going to do is turn off that, so I can make sure the seam that I'm about to create aligns with the seam that is on the outside of the panel of the band, basically. So from here on, I'm going to single crochet carefully, attach these two together with a single crochet stitch. And of course you can use a needle or a slip stitch for this method. I'm just attaching the one half of this front panel or the back panel, whatever this is at this point, to the band before I grab the second panel. Exactly what I did. So right there you see that I have the half, the first half attached. So what you're going to do now is you're going to just turn this, grab your second panel, and you are going to do the same thing by going into the next available space on the band. So to that next available space on the band, grab the first side and go into that very first available space on the second panel, and you are going to use the same method with single crocheting these two together, and automatically you just attached both panels together. So now you're going to just do the same thing by making your way up on a space, available space on the band, available space on the panel, and single crochet the two together until you get to the very end of the panel. And of course, because this is a band, you have to stretch it if it's a little bit too smaller than the panel, but if it's the same, all you have to do is just carefully single crochet the two together and you will be fine. So like I was saying, I'm just going to grab this side, opposite panel, go into the next available space on the band, grab the opposite, and I'm just going to do the same method I used, just so I can have the second band also single crochet to the second panel, single crochet to the band, and then we have one full panel instead of having 3 different panels together. So you're going to just repeat this by single crocheting your way around till you get to the very end. I have it single crochet together, and this is what it should look like at this point. So this is basically just a neck panel. There is an opening right there, and it falls all the way like this. So you're now going to grab your front and your back panel, your sweater, grab the sweater and lay this flat, just like that, and we are going to now attach this side of the panel. All we are going to do is make sure we are going to attach that inwards, so this part is going to eventually fall like that. So what you're going to do is, you have two panel sides, so we're just going to open both like that. I hope you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. So we have both panels, right? So what we're going to do in this part of the panel is we want to make sure that this side, the short side, falls on the side of the band, and this short side also falls on this side of the seam. So this is what they need to look like at the end. Hopefully that will make sense when we're complete, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a stitch marker and just mark this panel, right? So you're going to find the center stitch on your sweater, and when you find that, you are going to align the center on the neck panel, and when you have that, all you're going to do is just stretch that to, just so you can mark this area. You know exactly where you need to stop and where you need to start, because now that I have this marked, I am going to also mark the center just to play safe. To play safe, I am going to mark the center piece as well to the center of my sweater, just to play safe again. And again, we're doing all this inside because you want this to fall right above like this. This is what the initial style is about, and I'm going to do the same thing on the last side. I'm just gonna show you guys how we do one, and you guys can just go ahead and do the opposite one, because if I do this, the video is going to be 2 hours long, and I know for sure that it's already so long because of the different panels that are involved in this pattern. So now we have point A, point B, and point C. You are going to just single crochet all these different points to this panel. Again, because this is the front panel, the front part, it is going to be a bit difficult just because of this thing that we did right here, but at the back it should be super easy because you have a very straight seam going on there. But I'm sure you will be able to figure that out. So I'm going to show you guys the technique I'm going to use for this pattern, and hopefully you guys will be able to do the same. So I am going to turn this, making sure that the seam, you want to make sure that the seam on each side aligns with the seam on each side. So right here you can see that the seam area on the band on the neck panel is right there, so that's the reason why I'm turning this from this point to this point, right? So it aligns with it, and I'm going to start from this point C at this point B, I don't know guys, I don't even know, and I'm going to, let me come close. So right here, I'm going to find my very first stitch on the neck panel as well, grab my working yarn, and I'm going to make a secure knot to secure the neck panel onto the sweater. And just make a secure knot by going with more knots around. So right there. Now all you are going to do is just single crochet the panel to the sweater, the neck panel to the sweater. It is easy, but I can tell that it's also might be a little bit difficult, complicated. So you're just going to chain one, go into the available space on the neck panel, available space on the sweater, which is the seam area, single crochet those two together. So right here I'm coming to where my second stitch marker is, and you guys can see that this is what I've been doing so far. So I'm basically going above the seam that I created with my new set of seam. So I'm going to just take off the stitch marker now because I will be going through that area with my next set of single crochets. And again, this is what I mean by it might be a little bit difficult on the front panel because we did go back with this two edges of the panel underneath each other, so you might find it a little bit difficult. But all I would suggest to do is just go above the seam. So even while, if you look at this carefully, you can see that there's still a seam that goes to this opposite side of the panel of the stitch marker. So what I'm going to do is just continue around that same area, because the goal is to make sure that this band falls above this neck panel. That's entirely what the goal is. So I'm just going to repeat that until I get to the opposite side of this panel as well, and I'm still going through the seam around the band area to get that done. This is why I actually like to single crochet, because I feel like then you can really see the seam, and it's also easy for you to go through that seam with another set of seam. That's the actual reason, one of the reasons why I like to single crochet my pieces together instead of using a needle or instead of using a slip stitch, because then it's easy to unravel and it's also very easy to just play around with if you need to. Because I'm coming to this opposite, the last stitch marker, I am just going to take that off, because then I'll have a clear I can actually see what I'm doing. So you can see that I'm actually on the last space on the neck panel, so I'm just going to go into that last available space again, just so I can seal that off. I like to go into that last stitch with a slip stitch, and then I like to just chain one and cut this off. And just like that, I just attached the neck panel to the front side, and this is what it looks like. Of course, it looks awkward at the moment, but you are going to just go ahead and do the same thing with attaching the opposite side of the panel, and then you are complete. So you're going to mark the 3 ends. So now you already have an idea of where you need to make sure each hook. So you have a left, you have center, you have the right. So you want to make sure this side aligns with this side. So basically right there, you're marking with a stitch marker, find the center stitch, mark that with a stitch marker, and do the same thing and single crochet the same way. Do that, and then you just cut off the loose ends that you have around, and I'll see you guys with the final look.
Who is something about kind of woman that wants you but don't need you? Hey, I can't